Welcome back. We are going to look at the next concept of this lesson, which is the factors that disrupt the balance in the ecosystem. So we are first going to explain what the balance is. So the balance in the ecosystem refers to the stability in the ecosystem over a long period of time. So balance is stability. The plants and animals in the ecosystem depend on each other to survive. We've already spoken about that. So interruptions to an ecosystem can be disastrous for all organisms and could cause an imbalance in the ecosystem. So we said that the balance in the ecosystem speaks about stability. And we also know that plants and animals depend on one another for their survival. So if it happens that there's an interruption in that balance, then all of these organisms could be in danger. An ecosystem can only accommodate as many organisms as its resources. What are these resources that we speak of? This is food, water, and shelter, and can carry or allow. So what we are basically saying is that the organisms that are going to be in an ecosystem are going to be equal to the number of food or the amount of food, water, and shelter for it to remain in balance. So basically, the amount of organisms need to be equal to the amount of food, water, and shelter so that the ecosystem remains balanced. But the balance in the ecosystem can be interrupted by two factors. The first one is the natural and the human factors. Now let us go and look at these factors. We are going to start with the human factors causing an imbalance in our ecosystems. Balance in the ecosystem is disrupted when there are changes in the ecosystem that are so big that ecosystem cannot cope. In some cases, these disruptions are caused by humans, which is why we call them human factors. Below are a few examples of human factors that can cause an imbalance. So let us look at the examples of human factors causing an imbalance in the ecosystem. The first one is poor farming practices such as overgrazing, which leads to soil erosion. So let us look at a picture that gives us a bit of background of what we are talking about. So here we have, as you can see, we have cows sitting on the ground. And when you are looking at this ground, there's no grass at all here. So this tells us that overgrazing took place. When we are speaking of overgrazing, this is when the grass is exposed to excessive grazing or when the cows eats the grass so much that it doesn't get an opportunity to regrow. Now we call that overgrazing. Now when this soil is exposed, then it is prone to soil erosion. So that is the first human factor that we come across. The second one is untreated sewage waste, which causes severe pollution. And the last one is releasing toxic chemicals into the river and streams, which kills the aquatic life and plants. So let us look at a nice example here. As you can see, we have water, and we all know that inside the water there's aquatic life or aquatic animals and plants. So now the moment sewage is released into the water or chemicals are released into the water, that puts the animals and the plants that are in the water at danger of dying, because obviously these toxins are not healthy for them, so they are obviously going to die. Now those were the human factors. So we are going to look at the natural factors now. The balance in the ecosystem can also be disrupted by nature. So these human beings have no control over. Below is an example of natural factors that can cause an imbalance in the ecosystem. Extreme changes in patterns of weather and climate, such as floods. So floods carry toxic materials such as pesticides, industrial waste, sewage into the ecosystem. These then kill the plants and animals and destroy the food, the habitat, as well as poison the water. So that is the first natural factor that causes an imbalance in the ecosystem. It is floods. When they take place, they move pesticides, industrial waste, sewage, everything into the ecosystem, and that causes what? Damage to plants and animals. It damages the habitat, and also it kills them and poisons the water. So that's the first natural factor. All right, over here we have a nice town that has unfortunately experienced flooding. So obviously the water here that you can see here is carrying all of these things that we spoke about here, which is detrimental for the balance in the ecosystem. Now, our second natural factor is the drought. This is when an area is experiencing an abnormally long period with no rain or of no rain. So as you can see in this picture, we have a place that is very dry with no vegetation, just that one tree. So that's an indication that there hasn't been rain and photosynthesis hasn't been happening. So that is a place experiencing drought, part of the things that humans cannot have control over, but are natural factors. Right, we are going to move on to the last part of our lesson, which is the types of interactions in the ecosystem. In an ecosystem, organisms interact with other organisms in the same species or of the same species or different species. These are called ecological interactions. The most studied interactions between organisms are as follows. We have competition, predation, which is killing to eat, and symbiosis, which is the relationship or living together. So we are going to look at the first one, which is competition. This is when organisms of the same or different species in an ecosystem compete for limited resources such as food, water, territory, and more. So the competition is when they are competing for these things. Competition affects both the competing organisms negatively. Obviously, if the other one gets it, the other one doesn't get it. So they are both affected negatively. The second one is predation. So with this type of interaction, this is a feeding behavior of an organism by killing and consuming parts or all of another organism. A predator can be a plant or an animal that kills a prey, which can also be a plant or an animal. This interaction is beneficial to the predator and harmful to the prey, obviously because the predator is the one that is eating the prey, so the prey is harmed. Herbivores are also predators because they feed on plants. So an example, we have a lion killing a zebra, we have a venomous flytrap catching and eating a fly. All right, so in the picture alongside, you can see that we have water and ducks in the water. So when the ducks are feeding on the organisms in the water, that is a type of predation. So we are going to go on to the next one, which is symbiosis. Symbiosis describes the way in which two species living together interact with each other over a long period of time. This can happen in the form of parasitism, mutualism, and commensalism. So in the next slide, we are going to look at pictures that further explain these three interactions. So the first one that we spoke about was competition. So competition, as you can see in this picture, we have hyenas and vultures. They are both scavengers and they are competing for the same food. So they are competing or they are eating the same animal here. Then the second one that we spoke of was predation. So predation, as you can see in this picture, we have a lion that is eating the zebra. So the lion is the one that's benefiting here because it is feeding on its prey, which is the zebra. Then the last one is a symbiotic relationship, which is parasitism. So here we have ticks, which are parasites, and they feed off blood of many animals. For example, dogs, cows, bugs, and human beings. So this is a symbiotic relationship. So we are going to further look at symbiosis in detail. The first one is parasitism, which I've just explained now. It occurs when one species benefits which is the parasite, by harming the other species, which is the host. The host may be weakened and die in some parasitic interaction. So one species benefits, the other one might be weak or eventually die. Here's a picture that shows a mosquito and it is biting on an animal. It could be a human, it could be any other animal. Right, the second one is mutualism, which means eating together. So with mutualism, what happens is two species, when they both benefit from the interaction. So what do we mean by that? As you can see in this picture, we have a bee that is feeding on the nectar of this flower. So the bee is getting the nectar, the flower in return is getting pollinated. The last one is commensalism. So with commensalism, interactions between individuals from different species. So they are not of the same population, they are different species. The one species benefits while the other species does not benefit and is not harmed by the interaction. So as you can see, there's an egret here and also a zebra. So what the zebra is doing, it is grazing, and then as it grazes, obviously the small insects are going to pop up, and as they pop up, the egret is getting its food. So the zebra is not harmed, but the other one is getting its food, so it's benefiting. That is commensalism. So be careful not to confuse mutualism and commensalism. Mutualism, both of them, they benefit from the relationship or the interaction, whereas commensalism, one benefits, the other one is unaffected or unharmed. That is it for today. I hope you had a lovely time during this lesson. I'll see you next time.